Well, hello and welcome back. We are moving forward with Python and Django, and today we're going to take a step back and look at models again. We mentioned before that there are many ways that we can extend or work with, models. There's a lot of functionality built into this. At this point, we've looked at character fields, we looked at date time fields, we've got some integer fields, we have foreign keys. We did put our max length and whether or not we can be blank or null. But there's some other things we can do, actually quite a bit. So let's play around with those a little bit. The first thing you may notice is if I go to using the form that I have this minutes spent, status, completion date, and due date, and those are not necessarily the most user-friendly kinds of things. Now we went out to, let's see, when we went, first thing to look at is, by default, you may note that here we've got a space in minutes spent. Completion date does not. So if you, in your name, have an underscore, it's going to put a space there. But you may want it to be a little prettier than that. So instead, what we can do, and this is our, by default, this is our column name. Also, this is a class, and these are, while they're properties of the class, they're also by default going to be our column names. Now we can change that, but we can also change. Let's start first with the more visible. We're going to change the display name. Now, in order to do that, it's pretty straightforward. We have what is called a verbose name. And so let's say I do it like that. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to call this date due. I call this completed date. This is going to be status. This one's going to be, let's do time spent. And this is going to be created, even though we probably won't see it. Oh, and let's make this owner. We'll clean that up. So if we do just that, and we come back, let's make sure it's picked it up. Up our changes, and now we can see where we've got much prettier names. So wherever we use this, models, click on that. Wherever we use this, we're going to see these cleaned up, and that example would extend to the admin side. Call that admin. So if we look at tasks, let's see. And now we're going to see here that these have been, time spent, status, things like that. Now, another thing we can do is we can take advantage of, we can put some little help text there. So let's see. And that is done through another little addition called help text. Funny enough. So let's see, we're going to call this name of the task. And let's do time spent. That's going to be, minutes spent working this task. Let's just keep those two. And if we go over here, we're now going to see that help text by default. Remember, this is a default form. Now that help text is going to show up. So it's name of the task, minutes spent. And if we go to the, if we go over here to the admin side, we can see here that help text actually shows up also on the admin side. So anywhere we use the form, we're going to be able to see that. And that allows us to fairly quickly make some nice changes to our form to, we'll say, pretty it up. Now, another thing we can do is we can add defaults. So let's do, and this will be when you have a new, when you create something new within a database. So this is a database default. And let's say by default, that's going to be 0. Another thing we can do, and there's a lot of tags, but another thing we could do is we could index. We can create indexes fairly quickly. So if we wanted to do an index based on, let's say on status, then it's this matter of doing db index equals true. And now if we do a migrate, there's not much we've changed, but we did change this default and we did change this database that is changing on the, that would change in the back end. So in the back end, by that I mean the database. So now if I do make migrations, then we're going to see that we've altered several of these. And let's go look at this migration that we just built. There was my migrations, number 6. And so we're going to see those changes. So we can see here that it did went ahead and actually put that, it's actually changing the model, I guess, to some extent. So it is going to show us where the verbose name, but it's also showing where, let's see, like what did we do? Minutes. We can see where it's blank, can't be named. We've got our help text. So we're seeing a lot of these values show up here. There should be, oh, it may not show. So we can see that we've got now some additional pieces that have been added into our database. And I can go ahead and migrate them, I guess. So I'll run that through, and then I'm going to get back to running my application. Now there is within models, oops, it usually helps to do that, to save everything properly. Let me look at that again. Oh, apologies. So let's go look at that. We're going to see some additional changes here because I forgot to save that I have my default, and I think that was the big thing that I had not saved yet. So nevertheless, so you can do those changes. Let's go back over to our model. So we've seen that we can do that. There are actually a number of values that we can use. I don't really want to go too deep into those again today, but I do want to mention some things. If we come in and we look at the documentation, which you can find the Django documentation all the time, there are a lot of key things that you may find useful. Now we can see here help text that we just looked at. This is another one, editable. So you may have stuff, for example, I want maybe the creation date. Since I've already got a default, I may say that this is not editable. So at this point, that means that when it shows up before, oh, I didn't have creation date showing up anyways. Well, let's just pick status. Let's say that's not editable. Whoop. I'm not sure it's going to allow me to do that, but let's see if it will. So if we come in and I do this, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do a capital somewhere. Oh, there we go. Oh, and here we go. So now I'm going to see that status cannot be specified for a task model form as it is a non-editable field. So that means that our form, where we're able to do, remember, we're able to do some form stuff now because where did that go? Status is in there, but it's not editable. So that means that I'm not going to be able to put it in the field itself. Now, if we do, let's go back to my model. Let's clear that out. If I save that, and now what I'm going to see here is a creation date also, because it's not editable, then I can't put it on there. So there's a couple things you can't do when you set that. And so there's side effects that may or may not be useful as far as being able to change those. But this goes deeper into when you're changing it in the model, you're going to change it in the form, you're going to change it in the class that's working with it. So this is going to give you application level control over these various fields. Some other things you may look at is you can actually, although we don't, if you remember, we don't have an ID, but ID is there. We could also actually set something as a primary key if we want to do something not, if we set a primary key that is not the that ID that's generated, maybe wanted to be, like in this case, maybe name unique, that may show up. So maybe you want your list of phone numbers that it has to be unique phone numbers. And you can do unique for date, for years. We've looked at verbose name. And we're going to actually talk about validators in a future episode. I want to show some of these field types while we've got a little bit of time. In one of these is we've looked at auto field, I believe. Oh, actually we have not, but that automatically increments. So the ID is an auto field, but we can also do that if we wanted to do counts or something like that. If we wanted to do our own primary key maybe. You are able to do Booleans, character fields we've seen, date fields we've seen. And it has some nice little things. So you can actually do a timestamp within a date field. So you could say auto now. So this is a timestamp for, usually for last modified. So if I wanted to do, I don't have an updated date. But in that case, what I would do is I could come in and I could say updated. It's a date time field. It's going to be now. And I'm going to do auto now. If I do that, then that means every time there's a save, it's going to update this value to the date when the timestamp when it's saved. So this is great for audit purposes if you want to bring that in. You can do an auto now on an ad, which would be on created typically. So if you do auto now add equals true, then it's going to say it's either going to use the default date or the default date timestamp. We've got decimals if we need them. We have durations, which is going to give you some nice little features as far as entries and stuff like that. Email, which is actually going to use, it's got an email validator. So it's going to check that. If I wanted to come in, I'm not going to deal with that yet. I don't want to get too far afield today. I don't want to digress too much. We have file fields. So if we wanted to upload a file, and let's do that real quick. So on a task, let's add an attachment. And this is going to be models dot, and what do we call it? It was file field. And let's just do, I have to spell that right. So if I do a file field, oh, okay, so there we go. I'm going to reload it. Actually, let's do this. So I need to make my migrations. Now it's going to allow me, because it's not, let's say I want to go back. It's warning me when I try to do the migration that I need it to be able to be null because I'm adding it after it's already existed. So I am going to do, let's just say null equals true. I always forget that. So now, stop with the select. There we go. So if I make migrations and I migrate, and now run server, I'm going to be able to see here. Oh, am I on there? Oh, I have to add it. My mistake. I have to add it to my form because it was not on my form. So let's put it right after due date. Let's do attachment, and then we will be able to see that show up. And we can see here, because it's a file, it's going to allow me to do a file selector. I could pick something. Let's just pick a file real quick. and then it's going to save that out for me. And then we've got work to do on the back end when we submit this, but this at least gives us a start. So that is day 15. You'll be able to check out in GitHub. You'll be able to see the latest changes that we've made. We're going to keep moving forward with these kinds of things, but this will give us now some more ways to maybe tweak our forms a little quicker and put together our models and make them a little more enterprise class, essentially. That will do it for today. So have yourself a good one, and we will talk to you next time.